From the Tennessee Valley Weather Channel, this is Forecasting Space.
Hey folks, good afternoon and happy Friday. Hope you've had a nice week so far, and we're not talking weather today, we're talking space. Welcome to this new segment, Forecasting Space, with me, your host, Chase Wilson, and we're going to take a little bit of a different path here with this show. Of course, like I said, we're not talking meteorology, but we are still forecasting the week ahead in terms of space. We're going to be talking about upcoming launches for the week ahead, interesting space news, if there is any over the last week, as well as at the end of every show, a picture of the week from one of our great telescopes, Hubble, James Webb, or anything like that, because there are a lot of those to share, and I would be glad to share those with you. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. First on the agenda for launches over the next week is SpaceX, launching out of Vandenberg Space Force Base in California at 9:26 p.m. tomorrow. That's going to be a Starlink launch, Starlink Group 9-13. Now, they've launched thousands of these satellites. They send up to about 20 nowadays here on each individual launch, and this is certainly no different. This is going into a polar orbit, so be sure to keep an eye out if you have any family on the West Coast. If they're in LA, tell them to look north. They might just see this launch. The rocket's going to land back on their drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. One of the trademarks of SpaceX, of course, is their reusability in these rockets. They're going to be pretty busy too over the next few weeks, so be sure to stay tuned here in a second and I'll tell you more about them. In fact, the next launch out of America is another Starlink launch, Starlink Group 12-1. That's Monday at 3:32 a.m., so it's going to be dark out there. It's going to be very early in the morning, but that provides pretty good visibility. You'll definitely see that bright rocket plume if you have family down there, or if you're going on vacation here before Thanksgiving down to the Cape. Look out towards the east from Melbourne, and you'll probably see that bright plume of rockets going out there. In fact, Monday is a double-header. Starlink Group 6-76 is launching from the Kennedy Space Center at 9:31 p.m., so you start the day out and end the day with a Falcon launch. Both of these are going to land on their autonomous spaceport drone ships, which of course, like I said earlier, is really the hallmark of SpaceX. But besides this, really does not look like there are many launches coming out for the next week. SpaceX really does have a grip on the space industry right now, especially with their projects such as their constellation Starlink, which is their internet project, ongoing. Over the last week, SpaceX really has dominated the headlines too, because they had the 6th launch of their super heavy rocket. Now, this Starship is the top portion. This is the reusable aspect that has been causing so much of a headache, right? This was definitely an interesting launch because they were really pushing it to the limit. The last few launches have been met with varying degrees of success. Of course, the last launch really was remarkable. We saw a little bit of burn through on the flaps of that upper stage, but still, it managed to make it all the way down. And most remarkably, at least in my opinion, of the last launch, which was Launch 5, the booster, the 26-story building, came back and landed and was caught in what they call affectionately the chopsticks at the launch pad. Now, this launch, things were a little bit different, right? The chopsticks were not in functioning order, so they called a no-go for the landing, and it landed off in the Gulf of Mexico harmlessly, and actually had a pretty big light show there, kind of exploded. And then Starship went up into orbit, re-entered successfully, landed, and actually landed successfully in the Indian Ocean. It's pretty remarkable, and this system is pretty remarkable in its own right too, because it's sort of taking the ethos of the space shuttle and applying it to everything. Now, you remember the space shuttle was a little dubious, right? It was kind of a plane, kind of a spaceship, and you know, you really just need to go in all in on one or the other. And Starship really goes all in on this futurism here, this pure spaceship design here. And that's what they're really iterating on. There are going to be a lot of explosions. There have been a lot of explosions with this system, that much is for sure. But progress is being made, and hopefully over the next 5 to 10 years, this will be one of the systems helping taking us to the moon, Mars, maybe even beyond. And of course, we're pending regulatory approval, so hopefully we'll see another launch here soon, but it's probably going to be in the first portion of 2025 at this rate. In other news, more relevant to the Tennessee Valley, moving the Space Command for the Space Force back to Huntsville might be one of President-elect Trump's first acts, according to Alabama Congressman Mike Rogers. Earlier this week, he was talking about the fact that, indeed, over the last several years, there's a lot of talk about Huntsville being the base of Space Force. And of course, for the longest time, there was no Space Force, right? Space was generally under the jurisdiction of a section of the Air Force, but with Trump's last presidency, the new Space Force designation for that branch of the military has led to some controversy as to where the base should be. Should it stay in Colorado, where the Air Force has a pretty big presence, or should it be moved out to Huntsville? And a lot of these proponents suggest Huntsville due to the fact that it's closer logistically to a lot of NASA's supply chain, A lot of the private contractors, such as United Launch Alliance there in Decatur, are also based in the Tennessee Valley, and the Tennessee River provides a great access point for shipping things downriver through the Gulf and into the Cape. And it sure looks like these people won out, right? Definitely good for our local economy here because Trump originally did support the Air Force's decision to move to headquarters from Colorado Springs to Redstone Arsenal, and that was near the end of his first term. But of course, Joe Biden reversed that decision in 2023 due to some logistical reasons, and looks like now we're back to Huntsville. And of course, I think this one's probably going to stick because it's going to be codified. So very interesting to see how these developments will affect the Tennessee Valley. So we'll probably see some more jobs flowing in due time. That concludes the news segment of this. Now I want to show you a picture of the week. Of course, like I said, every week I'm going to choose a picture I find particularly compelling from space. Perhaps it's looking down here at Earth, perhaps it's looking up at outer space, really depends, but this one I think you'll really like. We're going back to 1995 for this one, taking a look at the Eagle Nebula from the Hubble Space Telescope, but you might know this picture better as the Pillars of Creation. This is a really incredible photo, one of my favorites, and definitely the one I want to start this show out on because the scale of this is just incredible. These massive, gaping, huge pillars here stretch light years and light years. In fact, at the very tip where you see those little filaments, I think the entire solar system could fit in one of those, right? These are just monumental features of the universe, and this is actually where stars are formed. This gas congeals and densifies, and whenever gravity starts to take hold, right, everything with mass has gravity, stars form, stars develop, and new solar systems are born constantly in these. That's why they're called the Pillars of Creation. This is just an incredible one. And now James Webb also had a view of this here now that it's launched over the last couple of years, but I'll save that one for another time because I really think this old photo, this legacy image, is just one of the best from outer space. You really don't get much better than this. That concludes this episode of Forecasting Space. Of course, join me next week on Friday for more. I'll have the latest updates on launches, space news, and more.